thanks everyone for joining the Fireside Chat. And in fact, it is a pleasure to have Ronnie here with us to share his views on some of the topics which all of us must be also thinking about. And Ronnie doesn't need any introduction, right? But however, it's my privilege to give a very short introduction, which may not do full justice. But he is the founder of UTV, which built starting from, I think, TV content to then movies, and which was finally bought by world's one of the best companies, Walt Disney. And then he is an investor. He's a co-investor with me in Lenskart, and a board member where I think it's a privilege. I've learned a lot during the last 8-9 years of interaction closely with him. And also he's a philanthropist. Swades, what he initiated in terms of touching 1 million lives is something phenomenal. And he's at an advanced stage in that journey, I would say. And then also upGrad, which possibly has an impact across the country in terms of, for people to upskill. Ronnie, this is our privilege to have you amongst us.
Thank you.
To share your views, and for our entrepreneurs as well as our team.
Thank you, and I look forward. Hope the hour connects with everybody, since everyone's spending valuable time. So we can make it really active and participative and interactive.
Yeah, Ronnie, I think we are in an unprecedented time, right? And but at the same time, while we are also battling all of Corona-related impact on business, on financials, and all of them, there is something which is also a great thing that has happened in the last 3 months' time, which is geo platforms raising about $20 billion, right? And they also are talking about their future plan, which yesterday in the AGM they announced saying that they have a capability to do 5G network as well. And almost a lot of their Fangman businesses, which are Facebook to Amazon to Netflix, all of it they are planning to do. So what are your views on it about, from a vantage point of an entrepreneur as well as an investor in startups?
Yeah, sure. So look, two things, just as a way of an opening comment, because you started by saying we're in unprecedented times, which I guess no question about that. But I have to say that as leaders and as entrepreneurs for all of us, I think it's our responsibility right now to bring a fair amount of balance and a fair amount of the best element of projection of certainty in an uncertain time. And I think what we're pretty certain about is, my personal view at least, is that tomorrow may be worse than today, and we should be prepared for that. And the next 1.5 years, the stronger we are, the longer term we think during those 1.5 years, the more clarity we'll give to our team of people. And I think today the big challenge is going to be, there's going to be a fair amount of consecutive bad news over a period of time. And I think most people at team levels like to hear all of it at one time. So how does one project as frank or blunt or total a picture, even in uncertain times? I think will segregate leaders from great leaders. As far as your question, TCM, on geo, I mean, I think we're having a fireside chat with entrepreneurs and investors. So obviously the capital raising becomes the element of that. But one thing I have to say about the Reliance story, which from the outside strikes me constantly, because I'm a firm believer that the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts. And a lot of us build businesses based on the sum of the parts could be bigger than the whole. That, let's diversify, let's try something new, let's form a new subsidiary, let's do this. And I think what they've done very, very well is that the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts. And that's been a consistent reason why they have been able to build the value that we've been able to build. Obviously, when you have a cash flow positive business and a profitable business, they didn't build it on the basis of raising private equity. They built some of their businesses based on a core business being profitable and then build on that. And obviously, then you can think really big. And I think whatever the balance you have, the ability to think big doesn't necessarily mean that it only depends on your bank balance. I think the gutsy people are the ones who think beyond their means from every point of view. I mean, there's a risk. He's sitting with his own brother who's actually gone down the other way, right? It's not like he hadn't thought through his plans or his dreams. So if you look at it just in one family, if you're the mother and the patriarch of that family, You're watching one brother taking the same amount of bold risks and taking forward, and somehow as the same person and the same sibling. So I think it's not always about funding and resources. It's also about the element of taking risks and having that phenomenal team to do it. But today, I think what they built is very unique. And I know Mukesh specifically said that we want to be great partners with entrepreneurs in India. And I think there was a specific statement even mentioned at his AGM yesterday. And to a certain extent, I do believe that. Look, it is an 800-pound gorilla. There's no question about that. Will they have more a dictative approach to things? Absolutely. Will they want to look at it from a control point of view? Yes. But there's that much that an organization can control. So I think it's a phenomenal ecosystem. For a lot of us who are playing the digital game here, they've opened up that landscape. We work in rural India, and I can tell you it's been quite a change. Specifically for upGrad, we wouldn't have been where we are today with a full online learning experience if it wasn't for the fact that what is happening overall, both from a point of view of low ARPU and high levels of service and connectivity. So I think it's a huge opportunity. Whether we like it or not, I think our dollar would have been at a different rate if it wasn't for the inflow. So I think they've propped up the exchange rate in a COVID period, whether you like it or not. And that's a big thank you for a lot of us. Maybe if we were getting monies in dollars, we would have said, I'll get 2 rupees more to the dollar if it wasn't for that. But on the flip side, for people who are importing things, I think they've almost kept the dollar very, very stable. But most of all, I think they've made the India flag fly and said that we're open for business, we're doing deals, and we can do deals in a part like this. So I think between ecosystem, fundraising, thinking big, and not that always only when you have tanked up with $5 billion can you go out and necessarily take the risk you want to do. Some other, for me, have been personal takeaways from what I see for Jio today.
Yeah, no, that is very interesting. This has also opened up a very interesting statement that only startups can be agile, right? It is a question of DNA that matters, yeah. Right? Size does not matter. To think digital also, right? Yep. Both digital and agile is something that that this company, the way they have done, even
it's a
when
question
they
of
launched,
culture. It's a question of culture, TCM. I've worked and partnered in my media days with both the Walt Disney Company and 20th Century Fox and News Corp. Both have been shareholders in my company. And both phenomenal companies at two different levels. But chalk and cheese in terms of culture. One, extremely entrepreneurial, extremely go out and do whatever you have to do, make the mistakes, make the failures. The other one, extremely process and hierarchical driven. It works for both of them. But today I'm saying the ones that are nimble, actually, it doesn't need to be in terms of size. I think large organizations have shown that all over the place.
And they started off, coming back to Jio, they started off actually acquiring a few companies, right? You see that continuing because in Silicon Valley, that is one of the things, the big companies continue to acquire so that ecosystem thrives, right? You see that.
I think the approach to acquisitions, TCM, from whatever I've seen from the outside, is be the catalyst and not the controller. And I think if they continue to be the catalyst and not the controller, they want ownership, because symbolically they've ever, the reason why if Mr. Ambani becomes the richest man in the world, it will be not because Jeff Bezos and Amazon's market cap is coming down. It may get to 2 trillion. But Mukesh's ability to do that, he needs to be 1/5 the size of Amazon because he owns 51%. And, Bezos owns much less percent. So that's their philosophy. But I think if they go with a catalyst approach, which is how they've taken M&As, look, we've got this entire ecosystem, come in here, breed on it, do whatever you want to do, and we want to capture the value. We don't want to necessarily play the premium later on. I think that works. So they will have a very domineering approach and a very cut and dry business approach. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, especially when you're running something of that nature. But I think the ability to be in a catalyst role is phenomenal.
Okay. No, that's good. That's good. And another big shift that has happened in India is the India's posture towards China, whether it is in terms of ban on applications, about 59 applications, some of them had hundreds of millions of users, and also in terms of, I think, investment from Chinese companies are slowing down. At least we hear that there are quite a few applications which are with the government but not yet approved. What is its impact? Because in the absence of SoftBank, they were possibly the largest pool of capital that's available.
Yeah, I mean, look, without making a political statement, I can only give you one analogy, for example. I mean, I'm related to Field Marshal Meenakshisundaram, passed away. And in the early days when I was talking to him and my father-in-law, who's also in the Air Force at that time, the one thing they would tell me is the real enemy for India is China. And he said, it goes back to at the end of World War II, when America was trying to move out of Europe. They said the real enemy is Russia. Why don't we finish off that and then go back to America? So I think you need to understand the geopolitical situation here. We do have someone that is from a governing point of view and a hostility point of view. I think it will only grow. It won't. This is indicative of that. If I see the present political dispensation, it's very strong on the mantra of Swayam and India and Make in India and the whole rhetoric. And it'll only get more and more stronger. Not because every 4 years we'll have an election and it's a great way to do that. But, outside of winning a World Cup cricket match, winning a war elects governments back faster than anyone else. Not that I think we need to get to war. So if you look at that element and then you see what's going to be the Dolby sound around you, I think the Dolby sound around for everybody in investment is this would be undependable, hostile capital. And I think it's connected to my other question that today, outside of what COVID has really brought about, is this whole world is flat is going away. Globalization is becoming less and less, and nationalism is becoming more and more, completely more and more. And I see for the next 3, 4, 5 years, forget about cultural changes or viewership changes or consumer changes. I think nationalism is going to be a very, very strong clarion call for many countries around the world. So if you take all of that into account, I think we'll have to be a little cautious of the fact that the mantra is not going to be favorable for Chinese capital. And it'll be a flogging horse.
Okay. No, in a way that is helping Indian startups, right? Already we are talking about TikTok replacements which are coming up, and they've notched up 25 million users already, right? In a way that this could be a big fillip for the Indian startup ecosystem in terms of creating our own.
Yeah, I mean, I hope and wish that China stepping out should not be the reason why we all get galvanized, because we've got a phenomenal domestic market. It's low on ARPU, but high on volume. But I think it is a phenomenal market for us to grab with or without the Chinese.
One of the things in terms of, what you've been in the media and entertainment space, and you have seen a lot of changes that have taken place in the last few decades, from pure broadcasting to now a lot more through pull. And many of the millennials don't even have possibly a TV connection, even a DTH, right? They are all onto the OTT platforms. What do you see in terms of the post-COVID, where there is a lot more engagement digital? I just want to hear your views on how the M&E media and entertainment space likely to change.
So I think when I kind of divested in 2012 UTV to the Walt Disney Company, at that time, I want to tell you, exits were scorned at. Now in the last 4 or 5 years, exit is a word that's coveted by entrepreneurs. But at that time in 2012, everyone kind of looked at me and said, you've abandoned your company, you left the media industry. Who does that kind of situation? But I think to me, the timing was appropriate from where I stood, because to me, I saw a couple of challenges. Overall, I think the media is on a downward trend. Conventional media companies can be phenomenal, but they're on a downward trend. Broadcasting, see, in India, things outlive. You can still have 40 news channels and they'll continue to be there. That's because the resilience is more about there's always going to be some Johnny that will want to spend 10 to 15 crores a year to make a loss-making news channel, to just have the power that says, I have a power of influence. So if you take that out of the ecosystem, overall, I would say print exists in these countries because there's always a next 100 million people that come into the reading population over a certain period of time. But the biggest challenge and the penny dropping moment in COVID has brought about is the dependency on advertising. We are a very low ARPU country. I started cable TV long back, and we were charging 200 rupees for single channel. Today, for 400 channels, the average cable bill, other than for all of us that live in an urban city, is 75 rupees as an ARPU across India. If you take all of DTH, all of cable, whatever else, for 400 channels. So in 30 years, you've seen that actually that whole thing hasn't moved the needle there. So we're a very low ARPU country. Therefore, subscription model, which is the bedrock of any media or sport. And I add sport to media because today, if it wasn't for sport, half the broadcasters would be out of business in any case. So I think the ecosystem is one where advertising dependency is a big challenge, and I think that will take years to recover. The general entertainment channels here have been in a position where they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. I've got this set of soap operas. A diminishing lot of people are watching it, but that diminishing lot is still 200 to 300 million people that are watching it, and I'm getting my advertising revenues. And therefore, the only growth cannot come from that. So I would say today, radio, broadcasting, all of them are definitely sunset industries. The digital part, obviously, is the new one, and their subscription model has really been from day one. And I think that's made a difference, that from day one, digital has started with the subscription model. But let's face it, it's really been the multinationals that have been able to do here. I don't think anyone is going to be a local player from here that's going to be able to go out there. And I don't think this is an industry where local players spout that says, I'm going to get acquired, they're going to get acquired. Because there's no model for these global platforms to acquire in local countries. They will acquire local talent, but they cannot acquire local platforms because the technology and the interface that they've created is so incredible that they don't need it to be bought from anywhere else. So that I would say is the one. Movies always has the high profileness. I just want to tell you, in the whole media pie, between a chart of 100, movies is about 9% of that media pie. But it occupies, perception-wise, 75% of our mind, partly because there's big screen, partly because of just, the media hype and the perception that motion pictures build. There I would say that storytelling will only go further. But I think today it's not about OTT platforms versus a cinema window. I think a cinema window is important. It will definitely not be a platform that will be viable for the next 1 to 1.5 years. But I think it's still a very viable platform. But consumer trends have changed. I think the pocket share for media and entertainment for a consumer for the next 2-3 years is going to go less, because primarily there are going to be other elements. Savings is going to form a big part of demand. Today, I think all of us as entrepreneurs are trying to get our supply back. We're trying to just get back into business, open a warehouse, deliver our goods, get to whatever we want to do. I think the surprise that we're going to have, not so pleasant one, is going to be demand coming back at the same rate at which I can open up my supply.
No, that's interesting. But earlier there used to be a theatrical release window. After that, there used to be a TV release window, and OTT was possibly after that, right? Now, do you think that getting changed at all?
I think it'll have a change. It was already changed. I mean, 2.5-3 years back, the first movie that we did at RSVP and we sold was a movie called Love Per Square Foot, followed by a movie called Love Stories. Both which I made for theatrical, sat in the theater, watched it in a preview and said, this will be ideal for digital. And I don't think people will necessarily come rushing to the movie theaters. So I think, yes, there will be 30% of content that will go straight and direct to digital, because today the movie-going experience has become a little bit of a challenge. I think the cinema theaters have exploited it way beyond the situation, because they've taken 25 minutes of advertising time. So really, even a 2-hour movie is a 3-hour viewing experience. The younger generation do not want to be seat belted to a chair for 3 hours just because they're getting a little bit of better popcorn. So I think they've kind of dug their own grave in terms of the cinematic experience. So you'll only go. So today, I think if people are going to the movie theaters 12 times a year, they're now going 6 times. And I think after COVID, it'll be more like 3 times a year.
Okay. And also the blockbuster model versus a lot more quality content type of thing also.
I think blockbusters are getting redefined. The blockbusters were basically defined as top stars, and then you can do whatever you want with them, even if it's just hardcore entertainment and they'd run. That discerning audience and storytelling has changed. The best of script writing and storytelling is moved to digital because they plan more and they pay more. So I think the budgets on digital have actually taken the entire element to the next level. And if you see today, even in America, in Hollywood, there are no storytelling movies. It's all either superheroes or franchises, 99% of them. And the best of script writers and originality has moved to the OTT space.
I just also want to hear your, experience in upGrad, and also, post-COVID, how it has changed, and what do you see this changing to, right? In terms of now, at least higher education, is there a possibility that people don't even have to go to a college physically?
I think the element of a definition of college, when you look at education as an event where you go to school and then you go to college, there'll still be a preference for people at college level to go to college. Though now online degrees have just started and we're launching 9 online degrees in the undergrad and grad space in September. So I think there are a lot of people in what I would call hinterland India or not the top 5 cities who want to go to aspirational colleges. So it's not about whether it's an either or. It's about I can get a degree or a graduate degree from Jamia or from Delhi University or from Mumbai University without necessarily going to Mumbai. And especially for the female gender, which normally are not allowed to and therefore have to go to a university or a college within 30 to 40 kilometer radius of their home or village or small city, that's going to change and move the needle. So the ability for you to be able to get an undergrad degree from anywhere is possible. The beauty on online is that today, whether we like it or not in India, the socioeconomic reasons force people to take up jobs very early in their lives and therefore skip education more as a necessity rather than a choice. And that's what I think online will substitute, where you can continue to work and learn and or get a degree. I think the only thing that the problem we want to solve is obviously lifelong learning as far as we're concerned, because we believe that education is no longer an event and that every 3 to 4 years, everyone will need to, in some form or the other, upgrade themselves. And they can't take a year off. They can't necessarily stop their working life. And I think the quest is today, whether we like it or not, for a professional, if you're not in the top 50 percentile of your company, both in terms of your ability for soft skills, your ability to be in some sense specialize and constantly being upgraded, the probability is that in the bottom 50%, you'll always have a performance problem or a politics problem or my job is at risk problem or irrelevance problem. So I think that's really the ecosystem that's bottling up. And that's what Guides are growing. That's the solution that we're working towards.
And what's the change that you have seen in upGrad after COVID?
So this is not a 2000 moment of the ITs. While I know that everyone in fundraising mode in EdTech will chant that, I'm in it. And I can tell you very bluntly, it's not that. It's not a demonetization moment like FinTech was. It's an excellent moment where evangelism and urgency has crept into EdTech because of the simple reason that everyone was skeptical. Corporates were skeptical. Your spouse and your parents were skeptical that what are you doing sitting in front of a computer for 3 hours to learn? This is no way to learn. Now that penny has dropped. So acceptability, urgency, and evangelism has changed. And colleges and everyone is accepting them, and so are corporates. On the flip side, I think is that because the next 1 to 2 years, the job market is going to be very, very, very soft. The context of people wanting to make financial commitments to take on courses is going to be a little low. So it's a mixed moment. By and large, it's much more positive. We've seen 100% growth. But the point is, I will only sum it up that says what COVID has been able to do, that what I would do in the next 4 years, I can now do in the next 2 years. But in these 6 months, what I set out to do, there might be a 20 to 30% growth. And that's the real facts. And anyone else saying it any other way is in fundraising mode.
But you see this as an inflection point in terms of consumer change as well?
I see it as an inflection point because of the simple reason that the acceptability of online as a learning medium has arrived. We would have taken on, all companies would have taken another 3 to 4 years of concept selling, brand building, credibility building, and that's been accelerated. So I see it more as an acceleration rather than an inflection point.
Yeah. So coming to broader, startup ecosystem, right? There is this big issue about how is the revenue coming back, and you also alluded to saying that whether the demand is going to come back the same way or not, and what should the entrepreneurs do? Like you said, I think they have to remain optimistic, but at the same time they have to conserve capital to be able to manage it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the problem that most in this generation of entrepreneurship also, and I'm not talking about many because many people are running different, but I think in this whole digital e-commerce and elements of business, this constant balance of fundraising versus being in business, I think, is a flawed concept. And I can say that with impunity because I'm a first generation entrepreneur, like almost everyone I'm sure on this call is. But I didn't have the luxury of PE angels and VC environment when I started any of my businesses at all. And therefore, you kind of get kicked around even more, but you also get a lot more resilient. And so there's not an either or situation. And I think if this is going to force you to build a more sustainable business model, to get your cost model really right, to balance off the entire situation, I don't think profitability is the be all and end all, but at the same time, it's an important element of what's the balance that the business that you want to build. And I think that obviously gets tilted when you're in fundraising mode, because there's always this element that how can I be profitable when I'm going to ask for growth? Because, hey, firstly, I'm raising $100 million. So it's going to hit my P&L, because if I raise the $100 million, it's not going to sit in my balance sheet. It's going to hit my P&L. So am I starting all over again where I think I brought it to a right unit economics and now the unit economics are going to go down? That's a cycle that I think is tough to follow. Today in COVID, I would urge everyone that, this is the time to really correct the model. Wherever anyone had that, you've got the best excuse now to do it with your investors who will push you in different directions, and definitely with your own team members and the model that you wanted to do. I think you can definitely read the Riot Act to your key direct reports. Some of them may want to overhire for the next 6 months, saying, I'm investing into the future. I need 30 more tech people. I need 40 more product people. I think this is the time for you to take those hard calls and read the Riot Act to people that says, let's get this business. The beauty will be that when the demand does come back, look, 1.5 years, even if it's a wash, if you think that at the end of the day, when the demand comes back, you're going to be a much better company, then I think this will be a good part on the CV of the company that says we went through this process. And all of us will have to go through this. There's no question about that. We may go through it by shutting a business, but that doesn't mean we won't start another business. I think as entrepreneurs, we're resilient. We're not going back to our jobs. If you don't find this, we'll find something else to do. But this is a phenomenal opportunity to course correct with impunity.
No, that's a very interesting thing. And in fact, as investor, I can say that even we are also driving, saying that, build a fundamentally strong business with profitability being the course, because you never know when you will be able to even raise next round, right? It's better. You have to survive with what you have and thrive, right? And that requires juicing the ecosystem completely. But it is also, the startup system, right? The 1 or 2 well-funded companies can redefine a lot of things in terms of disrupting the market insanely, right? How does an entrepreneur then react to that? That is a key thing where they get caught up in that, for lack of a better term, a traditional term called rat race, right? Somebody says that, okay, I am now going to increase discount to 30% because I got funded, and then you run the risk of, market share loss or, becoming less relevant.
No, I understand that. And there are no easy answers for that. It's each one to their own. I'm very clear and I have a very strong point of view that you're going to excel not because of the $400 million that is sitting in your bank versus the other guy who has $100 million sitting in his bank. But it's going to be about the product, your team, and your complete clarity of thought where you want to go. Because the simple reason is, yes, if the other person is funded, they're going to make more aggressive steps, whether we like it or not. But I think we've seen this graveyard on the other side also. I think we've seen a fair amount of these stories that we all look, aspire, and then one fine day, whoops, what happened there? But it was never a whoops moment in the first place. I mean, the companies that we idealized, Uber, they've raised $26 billion and their market cap today is $44 billion. Is that an IRR? Absolutely not. Some investors who came in early took secondary and made money. Yes. Have some people made money in Uber? Yes. The smart people realize this is not going to be there. At $26 billion, how do you get an ROC or a return on capital employed in a company? So I think part of our ecosystem today is a little bit spoiled because we think this is the only way to go because I'll be left out. We don't have a mature ecosystem where many of our companies have gone to market. And all I would say is, look, the mid-level investment bankers, with all due respect, when they come in, then they put in their 20 billion, 30 million, they want you to go out and raise more money naturally because they know that if you raise the next round, there'll be a strong secondary market so they can have their exit. But how many of us have really been able to list our companies? And when that's your real test of whether you've built a phenomenal business and whether it can go there. I'm not saying it's the ideal, because when you get there, analysts and quarterly results will drive you crazy, and it's a different benchmark. But if you take today a Make My Trip and a Just Dial, and you ask those founders whether they feel good that they listed the companies in which they did, I don't think so. And if you ask, I was having a conversation with the Easy Policy founder, and he said, look, one of the investors, I won't mention which one, but it's anybody's guess, put in $200 million and told us X, Y, Z, grow. And it's my regret. I regret that I raised that money at that level. And we've gone into a loss. It's taken me 4 years back to get to unit economics positive because of that thought process. Company like Netflix that is today $220 billion. But in 2000, they raised $50 million, and then they worked on their product. So there is no ideal answer, TCM, but all I would say is this will separate the men from the boys in many ways. Yes, people have a great charm and will be able to raise money. I don't think we've faced the real context of value creation. We haven't really seen too much of lick pref coming in the market, where after the kind of money you raise, I think every entrepreneur has to figure out at what percentage of my holding of my company do I feel I'm working for myself or I'm working for other people. At what percentage that if I go out and raise and my market cap is 5 billion or 10 billion or whatever it may be, the lick pref can actually take me down to zero. And how much of a snakes and ladders game do I want to play in the entrepreneurship for the rest of my life? So this may not be what everyone wants to hear. I have a very strong view, so I'm just giving you what I think.
No, it's a very interesting way to look at it. And I agree with you that, end of the day, for them to start after the lick pref is when they start earning their this thing. No, but we have seen multiple downturns in the past, right? And in each of them, a good chunk of startup ecosystems, despite the best of efforts, right, and best of intentions, get into trouble, because they don't have runway, because they have not yet reached a scale where they can do stuff better, and they then either get into shutdown or get into, M&A modes, right? How should an entrepreneur think through when they are faced with that situation? And everybody, like you said, in the next 18 months is anybody's guess, right? Unless you have insane amount of money in the bank.
Or you have a good business. I don't have insane amount of money at upGrad, I can tell you that. The total capital employed, all my money in there is a total of 170 crores to get the business to where we want to get. So I'm not a firm believer that you need to have a lot of capital, or you need to have a good business model, hopefully, and not or, and then you're necessarily fine. So all I would say is for the people who are thinking that, my only question is, how do you define trouble? Because you use the word, then you get into trouble. So right now, the trouble, the flat tire, is it a flat tire or is it an engine failure? And the fact of the matter is, you're getting into a nice, good sailboat, and then you're going out there. Then you get the first investor in, so you say, wow, let me get a swankier sailboat. Then you get that third investor in, and you got a really lovely sailboat, and you're sailing. And then suddenly that third investor says, wait a minute, I paid for most of the sailboat. The wind has changed. Please go back to shore. And everyone's saying, wait a minute. I'm halfway in the sea. This is the right direction to go. Now comes the fun. No. The wind has changed. Let's go back to shore. I paid for this sailboat. So what is trouble? There are different kinds of trouble for different people when you look at that. And I think the trouble is, do you have a business model that has a growth and profitability? It can also, the paths have to meet to some extent. So if you're constantly worried about running out of money, could there be some other problem also in the engine and not that? I'm not saying therefore it only needs to be that. You do need growth capital. I'm not a firm believer that says, no, it should only be, otherwise we'll be running B2B businesses where we'll be selling to somebody, there'll be a 10% margin and you can run a passive business, but that won't create the value. So yes, you need to do that. But I think we need to define for each of us, what's the trouble? Is it a sailboat trouble? Is it an engine trouble? Is it a tire trouble? And I think then you solve for it.
Okay. No, that's a very interesting way to put it. And one other question, right? For the startup ecosystem, the US visa regulations have changed. A lot of phenomenally talented people may still will have to come back to India, or those who have come back for various reasons just before this change and could not go back for months due to COVID related thing. So is this something that will help in the ecosystem?
I think so. I think we owe it for everyone to now come here. I'm saying nationalism is going to be a very strong mantra. Whether you like it or not, it's only going to get stronger. We're fooling ourselves if that doesn't happen. Whether Trump gets reelected or another person comes in, Middle America will force any politician there to play the clarion call on jobs. Job markets are going to shrink for the next 2 to 3 to 4 years in a very different manner. There's a limit to how many each country can print. $2 trillion of notes, $3 trillion of notes, then there won't be a Fort Knox and there won't be a gold balance. So I think each country will have its own problems. I strongly believe that it'll be a strong element here. India's too long been this arbitrage model on which we built our brand. We've not built our brand necessarily on some of the things where we're not known for originators or innovators. I think we loan ourselves. So when you look at the visa problem, yeah, we're the first guys who think we're in trouble. Why? Because we're in that arbitrage model where we think sending someone from here is going to be much cheaper than getting somebody to work there. And let's face it, I think these countries themselves have to experience that the kind of work we were doing at the 14-hour, 16-hour work for which some of us from India were doing that. Nobody in those local countries are going to do that. So they'll have their own learning that they will have to pay triple the cost, even there was a job, because those people don't have the work ethics that Indian people have in terms of work ethics. And if we can get that work ethics back here, phenomenal. And on a more narrative note, I can tell you, in rural India where we're working, and we work with many in a large part, we've been promulgating reverse migration for the last 5 years because the people who go to the cities don't have a better life. Grass is not greener on the other side for most of them. But most of them don't want to come back because they feel it's an ego situation. I left my village and I went to the city and I can't come between my tail between my legs. So there's a lot of emotional psyche when you're saying, I went to America, I had this job there, now my parents think, "Arey, wapas aa gaya." So I think a fair amount of this is also the pressure points and the stress points that come with people about what other people think, the whole ecosystem, the perception, how will I be perceived? Did I come, did I take a retreat or did I come with my chest thumping that I want to come back and do something for my country?
Yeah, no, that is interesting. We believe that I think, it is no more arbitrage game. It's a talent game. That is the reason why most US companies have R&D centers based out of Bangalore. And it is just that it's going to get accelerated even more now.
Yeah. And maybe in this pharma game and in this COVID game, if one of the 3 solutions or drug or vaccines comes out of India, that will put us on a global map.
Yeah. So the large India opportunity where, we still have a lot more to go. And also in terms of COVID related, more digital, plus possibly the talent coming back, I think promises to be very exciting for the startup system.
Yeah, I mean, I think the environment is grim, but but I think the atmosphere should be positive. That's how I put it. That the environment is grim, but if the atmosphere is positive, most environments can change.
That's true. I think one of the things I always say is entrepreneurs always wear pink glasses, right? And that is very important.
Yeah, but sometimes you need to wear dark glasses also.
I know that is the balance that has to come.
Yes.
That talks about also creating the black.
Not too dark, otherwise people will think you're blind. But dark glasses where you want to sort of, have that little tint about you and not always show what you're thinking. The dark glasses also not to always show what you're thinking.
That's good. No, Ronnie, thank you very much for a very, very freewheeling type of, views. And that is what I really enjoy in many of our interactions.